Здравствуйте, hello everybody. Today my video is going to be about how did I end up here in Russia. You know, I'm a 25-year-old man. I first came to Russia when I was 23. So how did I get here? What is my story? So let's start with, you know, how did I even become interested in Russia? Well, it all literally started when I was probably about 7 years old. And so what happened was, I was just at primary school and a new student, a new pupil joined the class. They moved from like a different place in England. It was about, you know, quite a bit away, the Midlands, and they just joined our new class, and we became best friends. And he was half English, half Kazakh, and we just became best friends basically. And I ended up going home, you know, round his house, you know, as friends do, as you do as friends. And because he was half Kazakh, his mother, who was Kazakh, spoke Russian around the house. He had two younger siblings and an older sister, and basically they didn't teach Russian to him or their eldest sibling, but they decided, wait, why aren't we teaching them Russian? So they taught the youngest two siblings how to speak Russian. So when I went round, that's all I heard. I was like, wow, I'm hearing Russian all the time. It's quite, you know, it's the first language I've ever heard of, apart from English at the time. And I just thought the Russian language was so cool. So that was my first introduction. And like I said, we were best friends. So I pretty much heard this from the age of 7, let's say, until, well, basically today. And I'm just walking through this little village area. I have a few American friends who think, you know, Russia's a horrible, well, not a horrible place. I don't know really how to explain it. They're still a little bit stuck in the Cold War propaganda era, if that makes sense. But these are some lovely houses around here. Wow, just look how pretty it is around here. And then the second thing that was more of an influence on me is when I was growing up, I used to play a lot of games, you know, video games, and typically Call of Duty, if anyone's heard of that. Maybe the older generation probably don't know of this, but in those games you have the typical America versus Russia, you know, the good guys versus the bad guys, and it kind of backlashed on me, this sort of good guys, bad guys thing, because I thought the Russians were so cool, the language, the aesthetic, everything. So I had a backlash effect, and I thought, wow, these guys are so cool. They have interesting accents when they speak Russian, like, yes, I am Russian, duh, duh, duh. And I just thought they were really cool. And it just had this snowball effect of me being interested in their language and how their names sound and so on and so forth. And my dad was very interested in World War history. So then I started watching films with my dad basically about the World War, the Germans, the Americans, the Russians. I'll put a few films that I watched on screen with my dad. But yeah, I watched many films about World War, even about the Soviet invasion into Afghanistan. I just found it very interesting, and I loved the Russian aesthetic. I don't know why. It's just one of those things you're pulled to, if that makes sense. And again, why did this happen? I don't know. It's just one of those things in life that you just like, you just thought is interesting. I've never walked this way before, and I was unaware that there was another section of a village this way, and it looks pretty cool. I've got to say, when the snow is out with the sun, it looks beautiful. It really does. And how amazing would it be to own like your own sort of secluded house out here. It's very quiet. I prefer, you know, the calm areas. Like it would be a dream to have like a house like this. I just find that pretty cool. Anyway, we'll get back to the topic of the video. I also read books about the Soviet Union. I'll put a specific book on screen now called, I think, Born Under a Lucky Star. And this book is, I believe it's quite not rare, but it's a hard book to get a hold of because the Soviet perspective wasn't very well documented at the time, you know, about their perspective in World War II. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, I would recommend to try and buy this book. It's very interesting. But the general consensus is I was just very interested with Russia, strangely, and the Soviet Union, and it was just one of those things in life. I think I'm at a dead end here. Yeah, I'm at a dead end. And I don't particularly want to walk down there, so I'll turn back around. So yes, in general, I was just particularly interested in Russian history and the Soviet history, and those things are sort of, you know, it's just interest. But as I grew up in life, as I went to secondary school, these decisions now that you make in your life are the ones that really could potentially affect, you know, your life going forward. And due to my interests, I wanted to study Russian at university. So at college and university, I should say. But in order to do so, I needed to pass my German exam, which, by the way, my school deems me as not intelligent enough to actually study a language in the first place. At school, I wasn't the cleverest child, but at the same time, I wouldn't say that I tried extremely hard anyway. I just sort of wanted to have a good time, you know. We would call it a class clown. But anyway, my parents actually wrote a specific letter, or at least I know they got in contact with my school and said, look, please let Tommy study the language, German language, because in order to do so, that would prove to the colleges and universities that I understand language fundamentals, therefore it wouldn't be a waste of time me learning Russian. Cut a long story short, I did fail my German exam, but till this day, I'm ever so glad that I did, because my life would be completely different. I guarantee if I passed that exam, I wouldn't be standing here today in Russia, because the amount of times I've heard stories about people sort of turning their hobby into a career, they don't enjoy it as much. So I also didn't see the sense of going to university or to college to study something that I didn't enjoy, that I didn't want to do. So I just basically said, I'm not going to go to university, I'll go to college for a year, and then you can basically get a job in England. So and then I went into the career, I guess you could say, as a undertaker, grabovщик. I was 17 years old as I started my work as a grabovщик. And grabovщик, я не знаю, как сказать, grabovщик. And I kind of just forgot about the whole element of Russia, if that makes sense. But due to the fact of me watching loads of films with my father about World War II and him knowing my fascination with Russia, we always said to each other, Tommy, when you're 18, we will go to Russia together and we'll go around the museums and look at all the memorabilia and monuments and so on. That was something I remember we always said, but it never happened. And obviously I was 17, and I just thought, okay, it's probably never going to happen. It's probably not going to happen. And I just forgot about it. Plus at that age, you're sort of being a little bit more, I don't know, sociable. You're doing different things, there's more distractions, right? So I just thought, okay, I'll forget about it. But then time went on. What is it? There's a dog. Is that a German Shepherd in Russia? And I'd just like to mention, my dad probably saw, you know, the visa process, saw how complicated it was to get to Russia, and probably thought, yeah, stuff that. But as I was saying, I went to work and essentially forgot about my fascination for a while. With all the other distractions there are in the world, you know, I just forgot about it. But then time went on and I was, I guess you could say, unhappy. But yeah, I just decided I'm going to pick up my fascination again with Russian. And I went to the pub many times with my dad saying, yeah, I'm going to study Russian again, Dad, and I said this to him many times down the pub in England, and at one point I remember him saying to me, Tommy, just stop telling me what you're gonna do, and just, if you're gonna do it, just do it, you know. So I was like, all right. I took that personally, but I took it personally in a good way, and I just started teaching myself Russian because, well, I just wanted to teach myself it. I don't know why, and I quickly found out that wasn't a good idea. I practically taught myself the alphabet. That took longer than it should have, but obviously it was because I was teaching myself. I was writing letters down at work with the sound, and that's how I learnt the Russian alphabet. I learned it completely myself without any help of a teacher, and I wouldn't recommend that. I really wouldn't. But eventually I found out, okay, this isn't going very well. I need to get a teacher. So that's what I did. I found a teacher on Instagram, and I won a competition to get a free lesson. And that's where it all started. I've just found this miniature walkway with a beautiful view. I thought I'd come down here, if it's possible. I believe it is. And yeah, I just love how beautiful this Russian village life is. Can you imagine having that house there with that view? That must look amazing in the summertime. So I looked for a Russian teacher in, I believe, 2022, and this is when this whole catastrophe, this whole, you know, geopolitical situation happened, and I was like, oh, as soon as I started learning the language and being hopeful of you know, hopefully visiting Russia in the future, and you know, learning the language, going there, speaking to people. This whole thing happened, even though this has been going on for years, 2014. But just when let me say this: when the whole world started to care in 2022. Yeah, so that made things a little bit more difficult, because even paying my teacher, I had to jump through hula hoops just to pay her. Do I walk across this? I don't even know where I'm going at this point. I probably shouldn't. I don't even know where I am, to be honest. But I don't think there's anything in the distance, so I'm probably just going to turn around. And walking in this level of snow probably isn't the best idea. Let's have a look. Okay, it's not too bad, but I probably will fall through, but I'm just going to turn around. So yeah, I had a teacher, and I took these lessons very seriously. Perhaps Russians might not think, and English people and American people might think my Russian still isn't very good, to which I agree with you. I still took them very seriously, and the Russian language is very hard to learn. I believe the Russian language is the third hardest language for English speakers to learn. For example, it's easier for other languages and so on, but for English-speaking people, it's the third hardest, I believe. But I took these lessons very seriously, to the point where I was asking my work, hello, can I meet you at the crematorium, or can I meet you at the church before we start work, because I want to have these lessons, right? I want to have these Russian lessons. So it was the point where I was taking it very seriously. But again, it's just such a hard language, so the progress probably might not be showing itself in my videos where I go out and speak to people. But learning Russian in the classroom is completely different to when you actually speak to the person in real life, because my goodness, it's like they're talking at 100 miles an hour, even though they're not. And my ears my ears, it's my listening that's terrible. And then I have to process everything and so on, but that's what I did, right? And then my teacher at the time, unbeknownst to me, was pregnant. So I was like, okay, when I found out she was pregnant, she obviously didn't have as much time to have lessons, and when we did, it probably wasn't the best lesson, right? Because they had to look after the baby. So I was just like, okay, that's not good. Finding a Russian teacher was already difficult. But I just basically tried to find another one. And during this time period, I was trying to figure out, all right, how can I get to Russia? How can I do that? And I figured out how to get through the visa process, and I found a new teacher called Kat. Okay? And I planned my trip to Russia in January 2024. So I went to Russia when I was 23 years old. I wanted to go in January 2024 because that was my birthday. Okay, my birthday's on the 31st of January. And I thought, how cool would it be if I could go to Russia on my birthday? Spend my birthday in Russia. I never do anything on my birthday. So that's what I did. I was like, okay, let's try and get there for January 2024. And that's when I arrived. I arrived like a week before my birthday, and I spent my birthday in Russia. How cool! And I finally got to Russia. It wasn't relief. No, it was relief. There wasn't excitement. It was just relief. As soon as I saw the snowy apartment buildings, it was just relief. You know, out the aeroplane window. But that relief was short-term lived, because then I spent 4.5 hours in passport control. But you know, they're doing their job, and they're doing it correctly. And as soon as I was out of the airport, obviously I went to all the attractions that I wanted to go to, the museums, monuments and so on. But I quickly realised, okay, after I've done all these things, who do I communicate with? What else do I do with my time? Where do I go? I purposefully didn't research things about Russia in this time period, because I was like, I didn't want to spoil it once I'm there. I pretty much wanted to go there with just the knowledge of my Russian history, essentially, not just like what there is today. I just didn't do that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to need to communicate with someone. I'm going to need to communicate with people or something. So I ended up meeting with my Russian teacher, Kat. Which is, it sounds a bit funny saying that, but yeah, and it just went from there, really, in regards to my relationship with a Russian girl, right? And I have tried to tell you guys that indirectly. She's wanted to keep things private, which I perfectly understand, and so have I to a degree. But there's a few videos where, well, especially this one, you could understand that I do have a partner here. But it's not all been plain sailing, because as everyone knows, the visa process in Russia is difficult. So I left Russia, and we ended up deciding to go and live in Georgia together. And I tried to be a digital nomad. She was obviously a teacher online, so this situation to her was, you know, it wasn't very difficult, but for me it was. And we left Georgia pretty swiftly, to be honest, not due to the fact of money, but that country, to work there as a digital nomad, it wasn't great. We had constant electrical outages and gas and water outages. I mean, I've made a video about it, you can go check it out. I mean, maybe Georgia's nice as a tourist, but definitely not living there in our experience. And yeah, we decided Georgia because they already refused her visa twice into the UK, due to my government thinking that she will not leave the country. That was their reasoning, which I find ironic, because at that specific time the amount of immigration into the UK was at its peak, I believe. And then after we left Georgia, because it really just was unsustainable, we tried again, and they said we didn't have enough money or something like that, which is fair enough. Because obviously we spent our money on plane tickets, on accommodation. We lived in Batumi, then we lived in Tbilisi because we was really trying to make it work, but it just wasn't happening. And during that time in Georgia, Kat found out that a new decree was passed, 702. And I was like, wow, okay, interesting. Things aren't going well here. Perhaps we try that. And then this is where we are today. This is where we are today, and yeah, that's my story. That is my story. That's how I'm here. That is how I'm here. I'm still, obviously I have a partner, right? So I'm still under the shared values visa. It's completely different when you have a wife and kids, I believe, but I'm here on the shared values visa, and that PDF, it is coming out this week. Maybe even when this video is posted, but if to those people that are interested in this shared values visa, keep an eye out. It'll be in this description, and I'll make a post. There's all the information on there that I could possibly give you, and plus you'll have the ability to message me anyway via email asking me questions. But that's my story, guys, and that's how I was influenced by Russia. That's how I found Russia to be so cool. And it's very lucky. It's very lucky to the point where I think, can you imagine if I didn't make that friend that day, my one of my best friends who's half Kazakh? Can you imagine how different life would be? It's just so interesting connecting the dots of your past, of your life. Wow, if I didn't meet this person, that wouldn't have happened. Or, you know, let's say, I failed, I passed my German exam, how different my life would be. It's just very interesting to sort of look back through your life and understand, wow, all these different decisions I made got me to where you are today, and just find that very interesting. And I hope you've enjoyed sort of the scenery of a random sort of Russian village. Russia's so beautiful. I just love the country. I love the culture. I love the people. I love the language. I love the history, the military history. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm very fortunate to be here. So yeah, I have some exciting videos coming in the future, so stick around. My content is only going to improve, and I have lots of news to share with you as well about my life here in Russia. So thanks for watching. Let this taxi go past, and I'm now going to head to the shop to buy Kat some milk because she's feeling unwell, and we've run out of milk and she wanted a coffee. So that's my plan, and I'll see you on the next video. Any questions, let me know in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Hold on, before we go, check this out. This is an interesting looking building. What do you reckon of that? Anyway, catch you on the next one.